The group that hopes to organize a Boston Olympics in 2024 is changing its plans in pursuit of local and international support, but there's also a campaign to limit the potential cost of games for local taxpayers. That's the goal of the Ballot campaign, whose organizers include our guest. We'd like to welcome the founder of the United Independent Party, Evan Falchuk. Thank you very much for being with us, Evan.
Always glad to be here.
First of all, I want to talk about your main ally here, the anti-automatic gas tax increase crowd. Seems a little bit of a strange combination.
It is. I mean, politics can make for strange bedfellows. You know, they organized to get signatures to put something on the ballot last year that I actually was against. I voted against the repeal of the gas tax. But what we're united in is the view that our political process ought to represent people, that the Olympics represents billions of dollars in risk to taxpayers, and we have to have a way to protect the taxpayers. So them joining forces with us is an important step in that process of getting this on the ballot for 2016.
I guess it also sends a message, and I know that for people to imply, even though you're not necessarily for people to infer, even though you're not implying it, is that, these are the people who are, anti-public transportation, anti-infrastructure. I mean, this is going to hurt the argument against Olympics,
Well,
spending.
it's, in our ballot question, we have it out there at bostonolympics.vote. You can read our ballot question. It has an exception in it for spending on transportation. And it is one of the interesting things about this alliance. And I think, you hear a lot of people talking in politics today about how people don't work together, they don't reach across party lines, but you can if you find areas in which you agree, in which case we do here, and you've got people that are willing to take a chance and reach out their hand and say, let's try to do something, and that's what we're doing.
Now, you hope to get a yes vote, but this is going to be yes for what exactly?
So our measure is entitled An Act for a Private Sector Funded Olympics. Everyone's used to hearing Boston 2024 say they don't want any taxpayer money. What this does is gets that in writing. It says no taxpayer funding for guarantees, no spending for venues, land acquisition, all the things we keep hearing about. But again, it has an exception for spending on transportation. So if there's an improvement to a T-line or a road or a bridge or anything that might possibly benefit the Olympics, that's okay. We don't want to stand in the way of that. What we're looking to do is protect taxpayers from the real big cost, which is these guarantees. That's where the taxpayer really is on the hook, and that's where we need to have protection.
Well, I can also see potential here for some gray areas. Let's say if there's public money used to help relocate businesses from Widett Circle to make way for an Olympic stadium. Well, that's not exactly money for infrastructure, but it's pretty connected to infrastructure too.
Well, it would be barred because what we're talking about is the only spending that would be allowed under our measure is spending that would be for transportation improvements. So if you were going to have to relocate a business in order to facilitate the Olympics, that's got to come out of the pocket of Boston 2024. And in fact, Boston 2024, when they talk about that issue, says that they will pay for that. All we're looking to do is put it in writing. The big problem that Boston 2024 has had is this history of deception around what it is that they're planning. They claimed for months that they didn't want any taxpayer money. And then when people did public records requests, they saw that the bid that they had submitted to the U.S. Olympic Committee included hundreds of millions of dollars in taxpayer funding. So we need to get the straight story from Boston 2024. And in any event, we need to make sure that there's a law that says that if they're wrong about their financial projections, we don't have to just take it on trust, we take action.
Well, right now, we don't have a hard plan. We don't know how these things are going to be financed. It could be anything from the generosity of the private sector to something like, what do they call it, value capture financing, and
right.
where there's public money up front, but you get more money back. So how do you draw a line between the real public and private here?
Well, we decided to make it very, very clear, which is that anything that is involving taxpayer money, which means either a guarantee, a government-backed bond, using future tax revenues in the present, those things would not be permitted. No taxpayer money for the Olympics. Again, if you want to spend money on transportation improvements, that's okay. So we want to make sure it is very clear and very simple. If someone is in support of the Olympics and wants to use private money to do it, we don't want to stand in the way of that, but we want to make sure that the taxpayers are protected.
Now, one of the things I can imagine happening is this gets on the ballot, and there's another question on the ballot, maybe through the work of Olympic supporters, and they both succeed, and the message is mixed. What do you do?
Well, the law would allow for multiple questions on the same issue, and Boston 2024 has said that they want to also vote have a referendum on this. The trouble is Boston 2024 has never made a filing with campaign finance about this. They also have not been in to see the Attorney General to talk about proposed language. Now, they have until August to do that, but the clock is ticking. They haven't even said what their question would say. It is conceivable there could be two. Ours requires a yes vote in order to pass, and that's what we're going to be asking people to do, is vote yes on whatever question number we get, to say, yes, I want to make sure the taxpayers are protected. Yes, I want to make sure that voters' voices are heard.
One other possible consequence here is after the voting is all over and done with, and let's say Boston is still in the running for the Olympics, we end up with a mess of litigation. We already have the casino being held up in litigation. So, what does that mean?
Well, that would not be a great result if that kind of thing happened. It's part of the reason why it would be good if our legislature was working properly and could actually deal with this right now. We've had the leadership of the Senate and of the House and the governor say they don't want taxpayer money to be used. They could pass a law right now. The trouble is both the House and Senate have both voted down measures that would have prevented the use of taxpayer money on the Olympics, which leaves it then to voters. So I look to our leaders to take action. I call on them to do it, but barring that, we've got to be citizens and take responsibility.
One thing I can imagine coming at you in the campaign over this is that the Olympic supporters might say, well, if people vote for what you propose, that's going to undermine the odds for Boston, so don't do that. Vote no on this because otherwise Boston won't stand a chance in getting the Olympics.
Well, their proposal was no taxpayer money, and they said this for months, no taxpayer money. Everything that we've heard over the last few weeks says that what they're going to come out with in the next few days will also say no taxpayer money. So it's quite a stretch to then say that somehow we would be undermining that effort. The big issue here is that the International Olympic Committee requires a guarantee from taxpayers. It requires that if there's a cost overrun or if there's not enough money from sponsorships, that taxpayers pay for it. This is a real issue, and we're talking about billions of dollars in risk at a time when we need taxpayer money for so many other important purposes.
Well, looking at what we know so far about the plans, and again, these are not really plans, but we see particulars, we see revisions. What's your sense of the risk?
It's significant. The average cost overrun at Olympics for the last 50 years is around 200%. That's a lot of money on an $8.1 billion budget. So we could be looking at $5 to $10 billion of taxpayer risk. That's a very significant amount of money in a state with about a $35 billion budget.
And we should mention also that if people want to get some more details on this in your campaign, what's the best place to look that up?
Best places to go are bostonolympics.vote. It's not .com, it's .vote. You can read all about our ballot measure, ways to get involved. Our organization is called Citizens for a Say. That's the name on Facebook. But bostonolympics.vote is your one-stop shop.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Great to be here.
From the United Independent Party, Evan Falchuk. And we'll have more news in just a moment.